We'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Garrick?
Here.
Pepcorn?
Here.
Preston? Here. Strand?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. Health. I have joined West Fargo Mayor Bernie Dardis, Moorhead Mayor Shelley Carlson, and Dilworth Mayor Chad Olson in signing a joint proclamation recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month. The proclamation encourages communities to increase awareness and understanding of mental health. Also, for the past few days, the lights outside City Hall have been illuminated in green to bring awareness to this important topic. Library. Starting May 4th, the library is offering a weekly tech help sessions from 3 to 6 p.m. in the community room in downtown Main Library. Librarians will be able to help residents one-on-one with technology issues including tablets, laptops, e-readers, and smartphones. Call the library to set up a 30-minute appointment. Librarians are not able to fix devices, however, they are able to assist residents in learning how to use them. Teen Craft Events features Mother's Day craft set for May 5th at 6 p.m. at the Northport Library. This session is free and all materials are provided. Public Works. The City of Fargo's Adopt a Street program was created in 1990 to enhance the aesthetics of the Fargo roadways by clearing litter from green spaces. Today, this very successful program has grown to include 29 volunteer groups responsible for clearing litter of city entrances, select right-of-way areas, and among the main arterial roadways. Each area is approximately 2 miles long and is marked by the group's name. We are proud of the continued excitement of Fargo's citizens and organizations to take part of this program and are happy to see so many of them introducing younger generations to community service. Current groups, valve routes, and further information can be found at our public website under Street Department. Today marked the first day of cleanup week, and we have 2 days of cleanup that will go along with your A/B as far as recycling. And it was successfully launched this morning, and the team is out picking up things all over the community. The other thing Public Works did is they gave away sandbags during the weekend, and it helped out Valley City, Cass County, Harwood, and Fort Ransom. And that's the sandbags the citizens made last year, about 29,000 of them. So we've successfully helped many communities fight flood. It's amazing how people hate making sandbags, but they like to take the ones that are already made. The Forestry Department has maintained CPR, IED, and first aid certification program for its staff for the last several years. During its January meeting, the Public Works Safety Committee discussed incorporating department-wide CPR and AED training and identified the need for all Public Works staff to be equipped with the knowledge of these life-saving measures and work with local educators to schedule sessions for early this spring. All that training is now completed and 81 staff members have earned certification. Going forward, this training will be provided annually for all new staff members as well as those needing recertification. We had a parade one time and somebody did have a heart attack and the AED came out before the firemen can get to him, so that was very helpful. Friday, April 29th, 6 firefighters graduated from the joint Fargo-West Fargo Fire Academy. On that day, we were proudly welcome Ethan, Logan, Brandon, Ryan, Kyle, and Cody to our team. The chief keeps coming to me and saying we're continuing to add people, and Tony, because of you, when we do the station number 8, we are adding some more people, but it is great to have a joint session and joint education with West Fargo, and we're getting great recruits. Here's a short video showcasing the Academy and the Fargo's newest firefighters.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you guys here. Great to partner with our neighbors to the west, West Fargo. You're in for 14 weeks of a lot of work.
The partnership that we have is really, again, built on the instructors in the back and Chief Dirksen and I and the way that we've envisioned that our departments are going to run.
Throughout Academy, we've kind of had just that competitive nature throughout our Academy where I was kind of getting timed on things and we all want to beat each other. So it was nice that kind of set the tone of being competitive with the guys that are around you and wanting to be faster than them.
The first time you go into the training building, and even our training setup as well, it's new and you don't know the layout, so you get the feel of what it's like responding to an incident. And it's really fun to get in there and no clue where you are, what you're searching, and feel around and identify, okay, this is a crib, this is a bed.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a confidence course, right? We have like a tight tube that you can barely fit through. Your arms are usually pinned at your sides or straight above your head, and you can't really move much. You're kind of just pushing yourself along with your toes when you're in that tube, or you're being tangled in wires, or doing your best to not get tangled in wires is the goal.
It's fun using the jaws of life. It's, hauling the big spreaders around. As far as, learning it, I think it goes back to us spending the first, little bit of the day in the classroom going over what we're actually doing, and then going out to get to use everything we just talked about. It helps cement it in your mind pretty fast, I think.
I think my favorite one was the second one that we did, mostly just because it involved the entire aspect. Pulling a hose, charging a line, going into a building that's low visibility, it's hot, and then getting to actually around a corner and seeing a fire that we get to put water on. It was a good culmination of everything that we had practiced dry before that, and getting to actually do the work.
I really valued the ride-alongs a lot. It's one thing to be taught the things in class, but to be able to see firefighters and join them and doing some of those things, whether it be responding to medicals or fire alarms or what have you, I thought it was really valuable to see how it's done. And it's cool to see that other stations kind of have their own little bit of culture and the way they do things. And so it was cool getting to see how they interacted with one another in their area of the community.
Overall, I loved learning how to fit in with the crews and getting to know everybody as we went.
Yeah, it's been great to, the facilities that Fargo has is different than what we have in West Fargo, and it's great to be able to come over and use those and work together, and for Fargo to come over and see what we've got and use what we have. It's been a good combination of stuff. The Fargo training captains and our training chief working together and getting those perspectives from different size departments, and it's been really good.
I think it's been a great experience. I think even with 9 of us, the instructors have been able to manage. They've taught us a lot. It's been drinking from the proverbial fire hose, if you will, but I think they do a wonderful job of getting us ready to rock and roll. And once we get on shift, it's a never-ending learning opportunity. We're never going to stop learning as firefighters. Every day is a chance to learn, and I think we'll be done learning when we retire.
It's been an awesome experience. All the guys that I went through were really, really great. Can't say enough about them. The training captains have been just outstanding. Super great guys with just a huge wealth of knowledge to share, and just an awesome experience and just a great culture.
Very good. Is there a motion to approve the order agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the April 18th, 2022 regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 35?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston? Aye. Mahoney?
Aye. Item 36, public resident comments. Jacqueline Dozenrod is first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, for giving me this time to speak. My name is Jacqueline Dozenrod, and I'm here before you as a longtime citizen of Fargo and as a person with disabilities. At the early April meeting of the Fargo City Commission, I was able to attend that meeting with the assistance of my mobility aid, a 16-inch wheelchair. For those who don't know, this is a relatively narrow chair. I know many people who use wheelchairs who utilize 24 to even 32-inch wide chairs, and sizing goes even higher than that. The first thing I noticed upon entering City Hall is how difficult it is to maneuver my chair through the door. Even with the assistance of a push button, I still had trouble getting my chair through the single standard width doorway. If I had trouble with my 16-inch chair, consider how much more difficult that would be for someone who uses a wider wheelchair. The second thing I noticed is the entrance to the commission chambers itself. There is no push button to assist with either entering or exiting these chambers. I was and still am appalled at this oversight in a brand new building. The third thing I have to say is something that the city has done right, and that is the winding path with a low slope leading up to City Hall. The low slope and gradual slope to the entrance makes it easier for wheelchair users to wheel up and down safely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners.
Victoria Johnson.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, my name is Victoria Johnson. I am a family advocate. I'm here to thank you, the City Commission, City of Fargo, city staff. I came here before you in April to ask that the Fargo City Hall be light blue for Autism Awareness Month. By doing that, the City of Fargo sent a message of inclusive and acceptance to the families and individuals living with autism spectrum disorder that they are a part of our community. I hope that the city will continue that year after year, acknowledge those who are in our community. When we know who are in our community, we are going to treat them with respect and acceptance. For that, I want to say thank you to the city again, commissioners, and the city staff.
Will Thompson.
Will Thompson, he, him, candidate for the Fargo City Commission. I'm very happy. I reached out to the mayor's office this last week inquiring about a proposition for mental health awareness, and I was told that y'all were already on it, and not just Fargo, but a joint one with all the other cities. So I'm very happy, and I wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for signing that proclamation. We saw just this last week, the Forum did an article on some consultants out of Bismarck were talking about how broken our mental health system is, and I get that that's not really a city thing that we can fix, but it's important that we as a city we're affirming the importance of mental health, and hopefully us taking that step and affirming it sends a message to Bismarck that we need these systems to be fixed. So I thank you once again for the work that you did there.
Ves Marinoff.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, good evening. I would move away from the mental health awareness issue and issue about disability awareness, which are very important, but I want to talk to you about the crime in our town, and I would like to talk to you about my concerns that crime is rising, and I feel that our city is going in the wrong direction. And I'm hoping that you are recognizing that the true heroes in our town are our cops, and the gentleman that was standing by the door, they wear dust uniform, and we need to empower those cops, and we need to stop coddling criminals who are often hiding behind the mask of mental health and addiction. And again, I'm not saying that mental health and addiction is not a problem in our town, but let's really realistically look at what's going on. Let's stop giving place at the table to the loudest voices in the room that are talking about issues that are not relevant to our town. And again, let's recognize that the true heroes in our town are our cops, our firefighters, our first responders, and let's empower them. I would encourage you to do that. Thank you very much.
Item 37, public hearing, application for transfer of the Class ABH RZ alcoholic beverage license from the Hotel Donaldson to Hotel Donaldson doing business as the Barney Stone Pub, Hodo, And the Barney Stowe Pub Hodo is be located at 101 Broadway. Steve Sprague to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. That was perfect timing because it was 5:14 when I stood up, and now it's 5:15, so we can hold the public hearing.
Our speakers are right on time tonight. It was very
It was
nice.
awesome. So what we have before you is a transfer application for the Hotel Donaldson. The group spearheaded by Jim Pullman that owns Blarney Stones in the region has come to an agreement with the Hotel Donaldson previous owner to operate a Blarney Stone type of restaurant. They are purchasing the whole hotel and all of its facilities that go with that. Which includes the rooms that they rent and then also the liquor license that can be used anywhere on the premise. They did pass the background check and went to Liquor Control Board and comes to you with a recommendation of approval. Any questions?
Is there one president who wishes to speak to this transfer? Anyone wishing to speak? If not, I'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston? Aye. Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Recommend for appointment of Director of Finance, Mike Redlinger, to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. I will present this item 38 this evening. I just want to briefly summarize our process that we had for our Director of Finance recruitment. We were selecting candidates for a pre-interview that before coming to Fargo. We had 6 candidates that we interviewed virtually. And then on April 11th, we actually interviewed our candidate that we're going to be meeting here this evening virtually, Terry Gayhart. And Terry interviewed with us on April 11th. Our selection committee is detailed in your communication. And Terry is currently in Texas, and she's had municipal government experience in Texas, New Mexico, as well as Wisconsin. And so your recommended action this evening, we've included Terry's resume, is to appoint Terry to the position. We just thoroughly enjoyed our time getting to know Terry. We think she's going to be a great fit for Fargo. We think that she'll really enjoy our time, her time here working with our finance group. And so we're very excited to have her here. And most importantly, she's joined us here this evening by phone. And so I just wanted Terry to introduce herself briefly to you, Commissioners, tell you a little bit about herself. And she'll be here 3 weeks from today on May 23rd, if approved by the Commission tonight. So Terry, we'll turn it over to you.
What can I begin to tell you? I've been in government for a very long time. I've studied governmental accounting for many years, and I've been quite successful with it. And it was wonderful. I was fortunate that you invited me to come in and meet your team. You're really lucky to have such a great team on hand. And I am so excited about the opportunity to come in and fulfill this role. It means a great deal to me. So thank you so much.
One of the things Terry said is Fargo is far more, because she found it really interesting compared to Texas, where she is now. So a variety of things that happened in this area, Terry, you really seem to embrace and like the stability of the financial department. Thank you. Any questions?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
You sure? Did you have something? No.
No, I just
Oh,
have a
I'm
second.
sorry. Just
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question, actually.
Preston.
Michael, this is probably more for you. We have seen 90-day and even, I think, one-year work plans coming from new director level. Will we be seeing it for this one as well?
And we'll be spending some time immediately with Terry when she gets here to really get the staff introductions down. We have a lot of new staff in the department as well. And so after we do that and we get her familiarized with the organization, we'll do that, and we'll make sure to be working with the liaison commissioner in this regard as well on some kind of short-term work plan. So yes, we're very much looking forward to getting her here. And she's going to have a whole bunch of different ideas too with her municipal experience coming from other communities. And so we want to learn from her as much as she can learn from us. We look forward to that. Thank you.
And I'll look
Shout
forward
out
to seeing
for-
it. Excuse me.
go ahead.
Oh, I just said, and I'll look forward to seeing that.
Just wanted to shout out Steve Sprague and Susan Thompson doing a great job getting the budget ready right now. And Steve has really stepped up a notch to find out where all the money is. So we always kind of wonder where Kent put it before, but he has all different buckets all over. So, yeah, Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Terry, it's going to be a pleasure to work with you. And one thing I'd like to note just peripherally is you're coming to a city that really embraces female leadership. And here we have another example of a woman director being named in Fargo. This isn't the case across the whole world and country, and I'm proud of our city. I'm proud of our open-mindedness. I'm proud of the bench being raised continually, the bar being raised higher. So again, looking forward to working with you and just taking note of that, the city you're coming to.
Thank you, John. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Peppercorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 39, presentation of the North Dakota Department of Transport funding proposal. Cindy Gray to explain.
Good evening, and thank you for putting this on your agenda this evening. When I went over this with the policy board last week, they asked that I bring this to the full board from each of our North Dakota jurisdictions. So I was at Cass County Commission this afternoon and now with all of you, and then also hoping to go to West Fargo and the city of Horace in the near future. But really what this boils down to is as we move forward into transportation management area designation, that we protect our funding sources and that we try to minimize as much as possible the burden on local government for funding roadway infrastructure improvements, especially when those roadways have a broader purpose in the whole overall roadway network. And so just as a little bit of background, I think most of you are familiar with the term transportation management area. Our metro area population exceeded 200,000 in the 2020 census, and that causes our Metropolitan Planning Organization, MetroCog in this case, to move into the designation of a transportation management area. So, and we are, so of course, the agency that handles all of that, but it is the metro area itself that will be designated as a transportation management area. And so what does that mean? What changes when we become a TMA? Our urbanized area will receive a direct suballocation of funds, of surface transportation block grant funds, transportation alternative program funds. Those are those dollars that go to the trails and pedestrian facilities in the community. And then also under the new legislation, carbon reduction funds. And so when the Federal Register comes out with the funding allocations for each state, we'll now join the larger metropolitan areas that actually have a line item of funding in those three categories that's designated for our metro area, for the North Dakota portion of our metro area. And then once that happens, also the local leaders from each of our jurisdictions, our policy board, which many of you are on, is then given the responsibility of prioritizing and selecting those construction projects which will get funded. So right now, our priorities get funneled up to North Dakota DOT, and they make the selection of what gets funded. But once this happens, starting October 1st of 2022, that next round of selections will lie with our local leaders, and you will all get to determine what projects get funded. And so in the meantime, we've been working with North Dakota DOT to try to determine what those funding levels will be and to try to get a better understanding of all of that. And it has been kind of a challenge for them and us because we're the first TMA in North Dakota. So it's a learning curve for all of us. And the numbers that you see on this graph represent what they have given us in the letter that was in your packet. You can cross-check those numbers, but what they have estimated will be our funding levels. That's at a 90% obligation authority of 90% of money that's authorized by Congress. If 90% of that gets obligated, then those are the funding levels that we would have to spend on our roadway network. I'm going to skip over this NHPP share here and jump down to the transportation alternatives share.
This is actually good news on the transportation alternatives because it ends up being about twice as much as what we usually get in terms of specific projects out of the state selection process. So we should be able to do more, and I think that's really good news. And then lastly is that carbon reduction allocation. That's the estimate of what we'll get for that, and that's aimed at things like electric vehicle readiness and changing street lights over to LED and any kind of infrastructure improvement that reduces carbon or reduces the production of carbon. So there's a lot that we have left to learn about that. But the thing that's really at issue is this National Highway Preservation Program and the share that's the way that the state intends to use or apply those funds within our metropolitan area. What you see here, this amount of just under $2 million a year, is what they've estimated that our centerline roadway mileage is of the whole state of North Dakota network, which is about 1% of what they're getting on an annual basis. This year, I believe they got about 181 million. And so they're suggesting to us that they provide us with 1.8 million, going up to about 1.9, close to 2 million over the next 4 years. And then that as a result of that they would then only have responsibility for the interstate system, and that our metropolitan area would take responsibility for roadways that are on the national highway system that aren't interstate. So that is one of the things we have a really big concern about, and where I'm asking for local leadership support to pursue this further with North Dakota DOT leadership and try to get that position changed. So the national highway system consists of our interstate highways and roadways in the state's jurisdiction, like Main Avenue, which is Highway 10, 12th Avenue North, 19th Avenue North, and University and 10th Street. Those are all designated highways. And as you know, those are also the highways that take most of our freight traffic. So the heavy truck traffic that is going to the industrial areas and to the interstate and so forth. And in discussions thus far, NDDOT has indicated that they would not spend NHPP funds on these roadways once they give us this small annual share of just under $2 million. And so we believe that that's insufficient to maintain this system, and that over time, the bulk of those other funds that I outlined for you would end up going to have to maintain those important roadways in our network. So the next thing I provided in your packet was just a breakout of the projects in our transportation improvement program, because I think it kind of tells a story on why we're concerned about this. In 2022, our metropolitan area in the North Dakota side of our metro area is spending just over 13 million of surface transportation block grant funds. We have a little bit of COVID relief type funds that Fargo is spending on the 32nd Avenue project. But as you can see, that 13 million makes up the bulk, more than half of what of our overall spending on roadways that are eligible for federal funding. And moving into 23, with the proposal that North Dakota DOT has given us, we would have a total of about 9.6 million. But already in our transportation improvement program is almost 8.4 million of National Highway System or National Highway Preservation Program funds designated for the Main Avenue project. So based on what we're being told, this would require a change in our TIP, and that would come out now of our surface transportation block grant funds. And our feeling on that is that that should remain as National Highway System funding, and then the local jurisdictions should be able to use that 8.3 million for other projects that you certainly have need for, whether it's the city of Fargo or the city of West Fargo. We know there's great need out there for roadway maintenance and improvements. And so we do still have time to get those projects ready for the use of federal funds if we can get this reversed now. Timing is of the essence because it takes time to get a project ready for federal funding. And so that's really at the heart of this. Looking into 2024, there's another Main Avenue project in the tip. It's a North Dakota DOT project that's using just over $4 million out of an estimated $5 million on a slide repair on a section of Main Avenue that was already reconstructed next to the Cheyenne River, and so there's a geotechnical issue there. And so we are, this is another scenario where if we could continue to have these NHS funds used on our National Highway System roadways, then that would free up $4 million of STBG money to use on our local roadway network. And so, again, timing will be an issue if we don't get these kinds of decisions clarified from North Dakota DOT in the very near future. Even in 2025, we have a project on 12th Avenue North at the Burlington Northern Railroad Bridge that is, the DOT programmed $500,000 of our STBG allocation toward that roadway. So again, that's part of the National Highway System and could certainly be funded from that pot of funds. So just to summarize, what is the issue? We will be receiving a draft memorandum of understanding from North Dakota DOT in the very near future, and we believe that North Dakota DOT should continue programming National Highway Preservation Program funds for our National Highway System roads that are under the state's jurisdiction to ensure that that direct suballocation of STBG funds that we get can be used on our local roadway network to the greatest extent possible. And up to this point, we've been told that this will not be the case, and that we will be responsible for those non-interstate roadways on the National Highway System. So I am here tonight to ask for local leadership support in getting the following questions answered. And I outlined these in the draft letter to the North Dakota DOT that was part of your packet. I don't know that you necessarily want me to go over them in great detail, but the first most important short-term question is, do they intend to continue to use NHPP funds on those two Main Avenue projects? Because there's over 12 million right away in the next 2 years that we could be programming on other local projects. And is it their intent, if it is their intent to use those, would we then, to continue to fund those two projects, then would we also be getting that 1.8 and 1.9 million respectively in addition? That's not clear either. So it's, again, really at issue is these funds right here. And then if it is not their intent to use National Highway Preservation Program funds on our National Highway System roadways on a case-by-case basis when they're needed, would our metro area be saddled with having to maintain these projects in perpetuity without access to those National Highway System funds? And then also we want a clear answer on congestion management air quality funds. And I have not brought this up before, but in other states like Kansas, for example, which is also an attainment state, they do not have a non-attainment air quality status, but they get several million in congestion management air quality funds. North Dakota DOT has been getting about 11 million. And in Kansas, off the top of that, they allocate a certain amount to their TMA areas of Kansas City and Wichita. And so then they can use those projects on congestion-related projects. And so we'd like the DOT to answer that question as well. We've asked it several times and we haven't gotten an answer to that. So we're hoping that that North Dakota can also make a decision like that. And so again, I'm asking for local leadership support in bringing these questions forward to the North Dakota DOT, and timeliness is very important. I do not have a written motion in your materials tonight, but I suggest that you make a motion to join with local leaders of Cass County, the cities of West Fargo and Horace, to pursue the matter of NHPP funding of non-interstate elements of the National Highway System in our urbanized area, as well as the CMAQ funding.
Cindy, thank you very much for making aware of this. Commissioner Pepcorn had been talking about this earlier, about the switchover and the money loss. This is really alarming because many of our locals have decreased costs when federal money is into it, especially 32nd Avenue. That really helped up our local businesses, so their specials weren't as high. And this is something we would take very seriously. Commissioner Pepcorn.
So if you can go back to the slide and show the different, like Main Avenue, the different arterials that will be included. So the key thing is that we do not allow this to happen, because over the long run, we would have no money left to spend on any other projects. The good news is one of our members in Horace was in Kansas, and they had this very same thing. The precedent is on our side that they cannot remove these from. So I believe we should have our city attorney get involved, and instead of asking the DOT a question, we are going to tell them, you have to follow the precedent. You cannot remove these, because what they're trying to do, if you don't mind, I'll give you a quick summary. Cindy is awesome, and she's way more diplomatic than I am. This is a little bit of a turf war. The DOT is trying to, since now we're going to be able to call our own shots, which is great news for us, they're trying to take away some of the money, which that's kind of what they do. And so we have to be very united, and not just city, but also West Fargo, Cass County. This affects Moorhead, Clay County. And so we all have to be united together. But I would encourage, and maybe Nancy, not just our city attorney, but all the attorneys get together and notify the state that we are not going to accept this. I guess that's what I would recommend. So Cindy, I apologize for being less diplomatic, but I think it's critical that we do not allow this to happen. Thank you.
Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, my line of questions was related to the same thing, Cindy. Is there a reason this is put in a question format instead of saying, this is what we need and want?
The reason is because I don't always feel like I'm getting a solid answer, or at least not from a high enough level at the DOT that I'm comfortable that it is indeed the answer. So
what happens if you get the answer that we don't want, and this is a timeliness issue?
Mayor and Commissioner Preston, you're absolutely right. Those questions could be rephrased as statements.
I would encourage that.
We have a good relationship with Department of Transportation, State of North Dakota, but I think we may have to go federal as well. So we may have to go to the Department of Transportation Secretary and talk to him, as well as our congressional delegation. And I think once we're clear, I think you've been pretty clear that this would be devastating to our local, how we do things. We have $1 billion asset in our roadways. And if you start adding this, our CIP goes out. We just don't have enough money to sustain it. So I think we will join, I don't know, do you want a motion as a team to join in and work on this, or Commissioner Strand?
Mayor, I'd make the recommended motion that Cindy voiced to us. If you could repeat it, please, Cindy.
Certainly. A motion to join with local leaders of Cass County, cities of West Fargo and Horace, to pursue the matter of NHPP funding of non-interstate elements of the National Highway System in our urbanized area, and also to pursue an allocation of CMAQ funding.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'm the chair of the MetroCog, and I work with Cindy. Actually, we had a meeting today at 12. Cindy is awesome, and we have a great group. It's one of the most fun groups that I'm a part of, because it's all the different political subdivisions, and we all get together, and there isn't any media there, so it's a lot more fun.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask.
Commissioner Preston.
So Cindy, will this allow you to make the tone of the letter stronger?
Yes, I believe it will, yes.
Okay.
And as Commissioner Preston, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Pepcorn noted, it isn't just Kansas. We've spoken with MPOs in Iowa and Minnesota, or the Twin Cities is the only other one in Minnesota, and one other one that's escaping me right now, Wisconsin. And they all use National Highway System funds on their non-interstate roadways. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Recommendation to approve the amended engineer's report for 32nd Avenue South reconstruction project. Tom Knockmus to explain. And thanks, Tom, for doing this so quickly. We had asked you to bring this back to us right away, and you have.
Yeah, good evening. So happy to be here tonight to talk about 32nd Avenue and our plan to rebid. And then Amy with Flint Group is also here to speak to the public outreach that we intend to do on this project. So just a recap of where we've been. February 11th, we opened bids, received 3 bids, ranged from 16.6 to 19.2 million. Came back on February 22nd to reject those bids. After that, we met with contractors to gather information. We were back here again on March 21st, where we spoke about a lot of that information that we were able to gather from those contractors. Made a recommendation to revise the plans to close down the roadway in segments and detour those routes. We were directed to do so, or that was approved to do so. And then since then, we've been working on the redesign of that project. We have submitted those plans to the North Dakota DOT, and those will be bidding on June 10th. And so we're here tonight to just give you an update of where we've been and some of the decisions that were made, and then how we plan to communicate with the public moving forward. So we kind of alluded to this when we were here back in March, and this is what we ended up on, 4 phases. And I'll get into a little bit more detail on these phases, but the phases are allowed to overlap to promote an earlier completion. And the substantial completion for the project, so the date that all work has to be complete would be October 20th of 2023. So phase 1 is 25th Street to 22nd Street, and the contractor will have 65 days. And I'll just point out the detour map is shown on the screen, or on the image on the left. So you can look at that. But the contractor has 65 days to complete this phase. And then we are incentivizing a quicker completion. So we incentivize at $5,000 per day up to a total of $50,000. And then we also create an incentive that if the contractor completes this phase by November 4th of 2022, they'll receive a lump sum $75,000 incentive. Similar to phase 1, phase 2 is just the 25th Street intersection. The contractor will have 45 days to do that. We also have an incentive of $5,000 per day up to $50,000. And again, if they complete this phase by November 4th of 2022, they'll receive a $75,000 incentive payment. One thing I do want to note also that's not mentioned on the slide is that the contractor will be allowed to close this intersection for a total of 7 days. Phase 3, 28th Street to 25th Street, contractor will have 75 days. Again, we have an incentive of $5,000 per day up to $50,000 if they complete it sooner than the 75 days. And phase 4, I jumped past phase 3 pretty quick, but just want to point out that the detour route for phase 3 and phase 4 are the same. But the phasing duration for phase 4 is 75 days. Again, the contractor has the potential of getting an incentive of up to $50,000 a day for every day they finish early. And then I just want to highlight that we also, again, we use a lot of incentive on this project to try to speed up the timelines. If the project is complete, all 4 phases are complete by August 19th, the contractor will have the ability to receive a full incentive of $150,000. And then that is reduced by $5,000 a day for every day after that. So as I mentioned earlier, set to rebid on June 10th. And so one of the things I want to talk about is the schedule. Again, it doesn't have to be complete until October 20th of 2023. But as we mentioned, there's a potential incentive for some work that if it gets done in 2022, and there's also a potential incentive for work being done earlier in 2023. And the reason why we did that is one of my concerns that I mentioned back in March is that we have concerns about the availability of materials for this project and also the workloads for existing contractors. So we felt this is the best way that we can get a low bid price and hopefully incentivize a contractor to perform some work this year without just driving up the bid price. So the last thing to talk about is project funding. The City of Fargo, we actually did receive an additional about $2.4 million in federal aid on this project that we're going to be able to use. And so with that comes an amended engineer's report and CPM agreement that reflect those changes in federal funds. And then also one thing I want to mention is that between the original bid and this one, we have not increased special assessments. The increased costs associated with the project are being either covered by federal funds or city funds. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amy.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Amy Norstead, and I'm with Flint Group, and I'm working on public engagement for the 32nd Avenue project. So tonight I want to talk to you about some of the goals and target audiences, as well as the objectives for our engagement plan. We'll go through a little bit of messaging and how we're planning to make this messaging unique and stick so people can understand the complexities of the project and some of the updates that have happened with it. We'll go over some of the phasing that we have, a phase 1 approach with some of the engagement and phase 2 along with those tactics, and then some additional engagement options that we are exploring. So phase 1 and phase 2 have a little bit of a difference. So phase 1 of our engagement plan, and I'd like to note that this is different than the phase 1 and phase 2 of the construction plan. I'm speaking solely about the engagement plan. Phase 1 is to update the community, the landowners, business owners, and all of the corridor users that there is an update in these construction plans and that finalized plans are coming soon. But we understand that construction could start this year or it could all be next year depending on what the contractor decides. So we want to make sure that people know that that is happening and can expect some changes coming soon. And then phase 2 of the engagement plan is to educate all of those stakeholders about the finalized construction plans. And hopefully we'll be able to educate them about the active construction that may or may not be happening this year. So some of the goals and audiences that we're focusing on. So we want to clearly communicate the phase 1 and phase 2 objectives that we just talked about. We want to encourage the audiences to look for those details of the upcoming updates for the construction schedule. We want to develop relationships and offer a lot of resources to the impacted community members and businesses. We want to be a partner with them and display compassion and care for them because of the impacts that road construction projects typically have on businesses. So we are going to be offering a lot of tools along with that. Our audiences are all the corridor users, building, property, and business owners, apartment management, and the residents. We have a lot of general public that uses that area, 32nd Avenue users. And then we do have a number of public and private schools as well as daycares there and the families that use those organizations. So with messaging, I mentioned that we want to make this attention-grabbing and unique. First of all, we want to acknowledge the updates and the complexity with a project that has made this project get to be where it is right now, and some of the updates that will change and some of the variables with it. We want to be attention-grabbing with this, and we are still working on some messaging upon confirmation and planning with our creative team, but we know that this has had a little bit of back and forth with it. So if we kind of capitalize on some of the fun nature of our Midwestern heritage and make the messaging stand out a little bit more, it'll stick a little bit more, and we have an option up there. But we are working on that with our creative team and hoping to have some fun with it. And then phase 2 with the messaging goes along with the phase 2 objectives that we mentioned, is just keeping the nature of it attention grabbing and then updating it to reflect the finalized plans for the construction project. So here are some of the tactics that we're going over with engagement. We want to follow a lot of the standard best practices that we have along with this. You can see up there is a sample of a postcard and a flyer that we've done in the past. We'll do that with some handouts. We'll do the typical media engagement via press releases and direct media pitches with some of our community media partners. We also want to do a virtual community Q&A. So typically there are in-person Q&A sessions or informational meetings, but we found with the shift in since COVID-19 has changed a lot of the way that we do business virtually, it would provide a lot more opportunity for people to get the information and participate in a virtual community information session that allows people to log on their lunch break or for 15 minutes or so to make it easier for them so they don't have to take an hour or hour and a half out of their day to do that. And we will, of course, accommodate those one-off situations where people aren't able to attend a virtual Q&A. We want to do a lot of business collaborations. We know that a lot of those big businesses in that area have a great audience that listens to them. So we want to be able to capitalize on that. One, help the business so they are a lot more successful through the process, and also just reach those target audiences. So a lot of them have employee newsletters. The schools have newsletters themselves. So if we can capitalize on that and reach those families and the employees and the patrons that way. We also want to do geofencing, and you may have noticed that middle graphic there. It was moving a little bit at first. I can refresh it so you can see it here. It moves along, and that is a GIF format that is part of geofencing that we commonly use. We've used this one in the past, and geofencing, if you're not familiar with it, targets people based on where they are location-wise with the website that they're on, and these advertisements can pop up based on that location. We can do that with websites and social media to make sure that we're reaching people where they're at so they can get the messaging. We've also done a lot of brainstorming collaboration with the City of Fargo Communication Department using social media. We have plans for that, signage, and various news segments that are standing already that the city utilizes, and just really bolstering the messaging that we have for that. And then once we get into the active construction phase, we'll be partnering with businesses to give them a lot of tools to make sure that they have a successful time during construction, making sure that they have the maps that they need, social media posts that they can use to share with their audiences and customers, and if they have email updates as well. Anything that they need to be successful, we want to partner with them and make this a more positive process. And then along the way, once we're doing all these tactics, we're going to be ongoing with monitoring and analytics to make sure that these messages are getting to the right people at the right time. And if we need to pivot along that way, we'll have the data to do that. And then finally, some additional engagement options that kind of fall outside of what is typically done for City of Fargo projects. We're looking into doing some billboards, some radio ads, some email marketing, some additional pop-up signage that you might already see around the area, but for different purposes, if we can utilize that. And then we are considering a residential postcard mailing. Whether or not any formal city letters go out, we'll consider that as another option to make sure that the residents in the area have the information.
And with that, happy to answer any questions that you might have about construction or phasing or anything with our public engagement.
Commissioner Preston.
So the phasing timelines that you had in there, the 75 days, 45 days, is that the amount of time that that portion of the road is going to be blocked off?
Correct. Yep, so that's how long the contractor will have to finish each one of those segments. Anything over that, and they'll have liquidated damages associated with it, so a reduction of payment to the contractor. And that's where, so for example, the one that had a 65-day duration, if they finish it in 55 days, they get a $50,000 incentive payment.
So has there been any initial discussions with the surrounding businesses or anything?
We have not reached out to businesses yet.
Okay.
But you said the intersection at 25 and 32nd was only a few days versus 45 days?
Yeah, so the total duration of the phase is 45 days. We'll maintain traffic through it the entire time except for a 7-day period.
But the rest of the, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but the rest of them, the road is going to be totally blocked, both lanes or both directions?
Correct.
Okay.
You might explain that, Tom, what caused the first bids to go up and why this is a better option?
Yeah, great question. So what we heard from our contractors is that with the constraints of the site, typical arterial that we're working on would commonly have 200 feet of total right of way. This roadway has 100 feet. And so to maintain traffic through the existing corridor and complete the construction, that was really the main takeaway that we got from our contractors, is that it's just not constructible, and that's what really drove up the pricing. They also figured it probably was going to take longer to do it that way as well. And we figured this is again, we talked a lot back in March how this is kind of the main avenue model, right? Using those phases, getting in and getting out as soon as we can to minimize impact that way.
And Commissioner Strand, you'd like it's a safety concern as well. Having it so narrow is difficult. If they do it this way, there's better options to be safe for their employees. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other further discussion, Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. It's great to see this project moving forward and the public's really needing it. I have an odd question. In the meantime, what do we do about all the bumps and the holes in the road?
Great question.
32nd Avenue is just
So
problem.
Public Works is certainly aware. The biggest issue we have right now is they are kind of hand-tied with their available methods right now until the asphalt plants open up, and we're hoping that will happen soon. But I have talked to Ben, and they do anticipate doing some additional patching out there to hold us over until we do reconstruct.
The hope is, John, in 2 weeks, the asphalt plants open up, and Ben's thinking about doing that, but he's got cleanup week this week and next week. And so realistically, after that, they'll go full blast. Commissioner Strand.
I understand, but in the meantime, we should slow the speeds down or something. People are going to lose, I mean, they're hitting these holes with their cars, and it's an issue. So if nothing else, we need to manage the traffic at a minimum.
Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Commissioner Pipcorn would like to have a discussion regarding the new elementary school being built at Rocking Horse Farm Addition and potential lost revenue to the city of Fargo. Commissioner Pipcorn.
Yeah, I just had a call from a citizen, and they just wanted to know what happens to the revenue. That's obviously land in the city of Fargo. There's a public school being built on it from West Fargo, so it's lost property tax revenue for the city of Fargo. So the question was, what happens? Do we get reimbursed? Like the diversion, we're having to reimburse if something happens. And so to me, it was a good question. I didn't have a good answer, and so if someone can help me with it, I'm curious to know.
Nancy, you and I had a discussion at the beginning of this meeting about if you purchase land, what can you do with it? You know, as I'm understanding where West Fargo has its schools, which they have 3 in our areas right now, Fargo residents are going to them oftentimes. But once we sell it to somebody, it's up to them to decide what they want to do with the land, whether it's taxable or not.
So, yeah, we had the discussion just prior to the meeting, so I haven't done any deep dive, but that area is zoned for that use that was presented to the Planning Commission and approved by City Commission. And so that land sale is in accordance with the zoning that is present in that location.
Which we voted on a month ago or so.
But Mr. Chair, that's all well and good, but I'm just saying the taxpayers, we are losing property tax revenue. It's not a school, it's not a Fargo school, so the taxpayers of Fargo are, somebody has to be reimbursing us. That's my opinion, because it's not a Fargo public school. And this goes back to the whole, there's a whole lot more there, but I'm just saying this is not right, that we are losing property tax revenue to an entity that is not the city of Fargo. That's just my opinion. So I just wanted to put it up for discussion. I appreciate the opportunity, but it's an issue because Commissioner Gary brings that up sometimes when we give tax exemptions. Somebody is getting a benefit and the taxpayers of Fargo are the ones footing the bill. Is that true?
Commissioner Strand.
You know, Commissioner Pepcorn, you bring up a topic that's pretty interesting on a bunch of different fronts. A lot of folks don't realize that something like 48% of the West Fargo School District is Fargo. 42% of the West Fargo School District is West Fargo. So about 6,000 or so, my math might not, of the resident students in the West Fargo School District are actually Fargo families and Fargo residents. So this is it's a dicey issue, but you know, I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Chairman, I think
Mr. Preston.
there's probably how many other schools in the same situation? Or
3
it's
others.
West Fargo School District and City of Fargo, so, yeah.
They still pay specials on anything, so.
Mayor.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. The question I was wondering if you were going to raise was whether or not, you know, we just saw an example of, we see examples of where the engineer's estimates are quite different than the actual bids. I was wondering if you were going to question the awarding of this bid, given the difference to the estimate, which was pretty substantial.
Item A, bid award for Improvement District Unit 22 M1. Who's explaining this? Brenda Derrick?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Item 41A is the bid award for the underground project within Rocking Horse. Typically, these would be on consent agenda, but with the other item, they were added to the regular agenda for discussion. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Commissioner Strand, in regards, we did reach out to the developer also to discuss where those bids came in before we recommended award also.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Preston?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Garrig? Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Agreement to early building permit with West Fargo Public School District Number 6. Brenda to explain that as well.
Mayor and Commissioners, again. So when we do have these buildings that take longer than a year to construct, one tool we have is to do an early building permit. So typically on these larger buildings where we don't have sewer and water servicing them immediately, we enter into an agreement that allows them to start construction while we're doing the project. So one of the items that has to happen first is the project has to be bid and awarded, and then we can look at entering into an early building permit. So attached, you'll see the early building permit and the recommendation for approval. And then this allows them to open up in the fall of 2023.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Garrig?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 42, status report on tax increment financing districts. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. I wanted to give you a report on the tax increment financing districts and then also discuss the Roars-Newman Center TIF and the situation that we're in right now. First of all, I just want to talk about the process, what happens after you approve a tax increment financing district. So, following your approval, the developer completes the project, pays for the TIF costs, and then documents those costs. Then the city verifies these TIF costs. The planning department's office manager does that. And in addition, we check to make sure that the project was complete as outlined in the development agreement. Once the mayors sign that completion certificate, the city issues a TIF promissory note to the developer, and only after that happens can the developer begin to receive the property tax payment. So each year that property pays property taxes like other properties in town. It goes to the county. There's a portion that's returned to the city that's the incremental increase, the increase from what it was before. And then the city makes that payment to the developer or the holder of that TIF note. These are just some TIF districts that have been completed quite a few years ago that are continuing on. Just note here that there's 4 districts that will end in the next 5 years. And when those districts end, those annual TIF payments of about what's budgeted for the 2023 revenue would just go to the general units of government rather than be refunded to the developer. These are the TIF districts that are where these are the TIF districts where construction is in progress. Some of these you approved real recently, one this year. The Roars-Newman Center, that was required to be done at the end of last year. And so that's one of the issues I want to talk to you about. The others would be completed either the end of 2023 or the end of 2024. We do have a little bit of information on the progress of those. The J Street flats that you approved early this year, demolition has commenced, and again, this one would be done, I believe, by the end of 2023. The former Kmart site, that building has been removed. This one is scheduled to be completed by the end of 2024, although a lot of work will begin this year. Another photo of that. Bruhala, I believe this one was scheduled for the end of 2023, but it is appears to be well ahead of schedule, and I think they're hoping to open this by the end of this calendar year. A lot of work's been done on this one. And then finally, Wild Oak, they got under construction last fall. This picture of the foundation and some of the precast going up. This is a housing project up in Oak Grove. So these all appear to be on schedule to be completed. As far as the Newman Center, there were several phases to this. There's the church that's on the north side, the faith-based housing kind of in between. The Roars Development Group did the market rate student housing. And then as part of this development, there was a requirement that there be 7 townhomes built along 12th Street. The apartments, those were occupied in July of last year, so they've been open for 10 months. There's no work yet on the townhome. So as we started to document the costs, we noted that the project wasn't done. The city has received $29,000 in TIF revenue. Early next year, we'll receive about another $145,000. But until those townhomes are done, the agreement would require us to hang on to that money until the project is complete, as well as we need to address the fact that it wasn't completed by the end of 2021. This is just another image. It shows the final land use plan. It shows where the townhomes would be. Got a few photos here. This right in front of that dirt area, that's where the townhomes would be located. This is looking north from the site. This is looking south. You can see there's a parking lot. There was an alternative for 4 townhomes to be on the church property, but I don't believe there's an intention to build those at this time. That's another photo. And then if you look where this driveway is, actually it's between lots 3 and 4. To the left, again, that's where the townhomes would be. Invited Mr. Roars, if you want to go up to the podium, and if you have any, I guess, comments. I've been asked, does the city still want the townhomes built? My answer has been yes. That's what's in the development agreement, and the development agreement really has the city holding the money until it's completed. There's no real provision for a partial payment unless you were to develop or amend the agreement. So maybe I'd be happy to answer any questions first. Mr. Roars is also here.
If I could, Mayor and Commissioners, thank you for the time to visit with you a little bit about this project. As Jim already laid out, there was 4 distinct phases to this project. And as we finished the student housing project, and the faith-based project is where all the students live, the congestion began to be a real issue for us. And then as we continued to work on the church and the auxiliary space to the church, the complexity of the project just continued to get greater and greater. And it is going to be one beautiful structure when we're done. However, it has taken more time than we would have anticipated originally when we put this agreement together. Then you add that complication to the causes that, or the effects that have been the result of COVID. And now today we find ourselves in a situation where the cost to construct those homes has greatly changed the dynamics or the numbers involved in building those 7 townhomes. So we're not here to say we are not going to build the townhomes. We do still plan on honoring the commitments we made to the Roosevelt District. We would just like to have more time to let some of the pricing things in the marketplace moderate before we engage construction on those. And as Jim also mentioned, that our agreement doesn't allow for flexibility for timing. we would like to ask the city council to consider modifying the agreement such as that we would then be able to wait for some time to expire, whether it be 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, for pricing to moderate and us to implement the majority of the tax increment district plan, because those revenues, as Jim indicated, we will be paying $140,000, $150,000 next year in taxes. And if we don't come to some type of a pro rata agreement of disbursements, then they go in abeyance. They just sit there and no one gets the benefit of those dollars. So that would be our request. I hope that you can understand that it's not that we're not going to do this. It's the timing as a result of COVID has put us in a real negative situation financially on this.
So let me understand what you're wanting us to do is delay, and then plus you want to get your tax money back? You want the 29,000 this year and 140 next year?
I guess the 29 doesn't bother me so much as the 140, because I think we're preparing for the next round more so than we're talking about the 29. But yes, Mayor, my comment would be is, can't we just take a look at a pro rata disbursement and then have a timetable on the end, a drop dead date that would say, okay, after this point in time, if it isn't, the townhomes aren't done, then this is the plan of action.
And then would we tell the Roosevelt neighborhood the apartments would be, or the 7 townhomes would be done when? 24, 25, 26?
Well, and I think that's what we need to come to grips with, Mayor. I would love to have some time to process this from, a constructability point of view, as well as the cost. The marketplace right now is rather upside down. The cost of materials has gone up over 600%. It's only backed off about 200 of that 600 is backed off. It's coming back down, but I think we need some time to allow things to normalize.
Questions of the commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
so
Pepcorn.
Jim, did we get any written, so this developers agreement expired at the end of last year. Do we get any written notice of any of these challenges or anything like that?
No, we haven't.
And I guess from Brenda, I mean, when we have construction projects, we get delays all the time. They write, they ask us a request, they give us the reason, and then we review it. So to me, this is laughable. The other thing that's very reflective is, did you notice all the apartments where money is coming in, they're all completed, 100%, they're all rented out. What percentage of the townhomes, how much is completed?
Of the townhomes?
Yeah, how much is completed of that?
No, the
Why
drawings-
wasn't it started all at the same time?
It was just too congested.
Yeah, or else maybe it's because they were never going to be built in the first place. I think he has no credibility, obviously. And what I'd like, obviously, I would encourage us to not take action tonight. I think we need to weigh all of our options. But the first thing we should do is schedule a meeting with Mr. Roars with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association so he can explain himself to this group, because I think he's lied to all of us. He lied to the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. And this is it, and it's common. That's what big developers think they can get away with, and this time it's not going to happen. And so to me, you have no credibility. To me, one of the options I'd like us to look at is, can we tear down this project and make him build new houses that were there, the ones that he let deteriorate? To me, that'd be one option. So I think we need to, as a group, continue this, but I think we need to look at our options, because to me, this was all planned a long time ago. He was never going to abide by this. And now to say the costs are higher, well, gee, maybe you should have built it when you should have built it. So anyway, I wouldn't believe it if this guy said the sky is blue and the grass is green. And the scary thing is, his daughter's running for mayor. Imagine if 2 months from now, we would have had a new mayor. Do you think we would have heard about any of this? I think it would have all gone away and we would have just been, just look at something else. So very disappointing. To me, you have no credibility. And I think the future of your business is at stake. So I hope you're taking this very seriously, because your credibility here is zero. Got it?
Commissioner Preston.
So I have to also express my extreme disappointment with this project. I was not on the commission at the time this was approved. I would not have been a vote to approve it because of the way it was handled, and I think Commissioner Pepcorn has already covered that. In my mind, this is a breaking of a contract. So when a contract is broken, it's null and void. And I don't know exactly what kind of actions we would have to take there, but I certainly don't agree with extending anything. We're way beyond the deadline. We're 6-8 months beyond the deadline. And no, I would not agree to a delay.
Commissioner Gary?
Jim, so what would the next steps be? I mean, this is kind of the process of clawing back. With a business that said they're going to hire 5 people and they hired 0, we would be looking at kind of the same situation of how do we get the money back that we were going to give to them. So what are the next steps where we can talk about the options of what we can do?
I think the next steps are, I have been talking to the city attorney and it kind of defer to Nancy about what your options are going to be. I think when you get into a legal contract disagreement, we'd like to bring in the attorneys and for you to weigh your options.
Nancy Morris.
Yes, I would concur. There are some options that are available to you. I do think that there is the possibility of an extension if you're interested in doing that. Of course, the contract did end at the end of 2021. But of course, the argument is that there have been unavoidable delays, which is provided for by the contract. So that would be something that would need to be explored further as to whether there's a breach of contract and the potential for litigation on this matter.
Any other questions or comment? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Mr. Rohrs, you know, your agent, I think Larry Nygaard, if I recall, we really worked hard at this topic. Commissioner Gunberg was here at the table, and we had immense mediation and negotiations in this process, or you wouldn't have had a project, period. And it took some resolve on both sides to try come up with a project while we were still, you know, trying to not yield completely our values. There's absolutely no doubt about it that this project tested our relationship with our neighborhoods. It tested the fiber of our agreements with our neighborhoods and our people. And what we ended up agreeing with was a project, and we agreed to have 7 townhomes and potentially 4 more townhomes. And then, if I recall, we agreed to dedicate a portion of those TIF funds to neighborhood redevelopment. So you wouldn't have this project if we hadn't all sat down and rolled up our sleeves and negotiated. And you wouldn't have this project if the neighborhood folks didn't ultimately just throw up their arms and go, okay, we lost again. One more time, we always lose. We clear cut blocks, allow development to happen, lose a block of houses at a time, and gamble on an agreement that will all deliver what we said we would deliver. So I wouldn't have known this project was in limbo, not to use a Catholic term, but I would have known it was in jeopardy until it came to the city tonight. And this should have been addressed prior to the conclusion of the term of the contract agreement. And I don't know where we go from this point forward, but there was an immense amount of investment in a relationship with our neighborhood there that paid a price that's incalculable.
Mayor?
Morris.
Mr. Strand and Mayor, there was never an intention on our project, on our plan, not to do what we committed to do. I have apologized for the fact that timing is maybe not on our side. I thought we were working in a state of cooperation and we would give and flow with each other's needs. The site was extremely congested during the process. I didn't know that there was a time clock that was going to bite us in the rear as it related to the completion of the townhomes. I did not know that my daughter was going to run for mayor. The accusations that were made are totally unfounded and they're based on an individual's impression of what took place. I just want you to know we never did not intend to live up to every term in the contract that we entered into with you and the neighborhood. We do intend to build those townhomes.
Mr. Garrick.
I do see a few of my neighbors here from Roosevelt and their association, and that is my neighborhood, that's where I live. I want to encourage you to get active now before new agreements happen or things like that. Have meetings at the schools, whatever, and make sure the neighbors in the neighborhood know what's happening. If the agreement isn't followed through, there's going to be proposals, like you've heard, to make changes to it, to make it so that they can still do what they want to do. And if you're opposed to that, I want the public to be active now instead of later. React.
Just so the public knows, the president of the Roosevelt neighborhood did contact us, and we got 3 emails from different neighbors that are on the council or on part of that, and that's probably why a lot of the commissioners know what happened or what was promised at that time. And we would say, yes, we want public input before we get back together and look at our options, but that would be very helpful for the commission to know what do the people want to do. Commissioner Preston.
Mr. Rohrs, I'd like you to know how often I have to defend these incentives to the public. And it all is based on trust. And I am sorry, but I feel like the trust has been broken here. You have indicated that congestion and expense of supplies and materials is causing this. I would say, especially the congestion piece, you should have anticipated when you put the plan together. It's very clearly identified in the agreement, the time frame. So I'm just really disappointed that this whole situation has happened, because it is breaking the trust of not only myself with you and your company, but between the public and you and your company, and frankly, this whole program. So it makes it so much more difficult for us to clearly support the incentive program when we have something like this happen.
Mr. Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to have happen is to have either a planning department or somebody in the city schedule a meeting for the Roosevelt neighborhood to meet with Mr. Rohrs so he can answer to the people that he lied to face to face. But the other thing he did, he lied to all of the city commissioners when we voted on this. I mean, straight out lied to us, and it hurts our credibility. So it's a very big deal. And so I think we need to weigh all of our options and behave very methodically and very wisely. But we need to come down very hard on a bad actor like this, because clearly the intentions were all along this way. And so now it's just covering up and making excuses. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Could I have a motion, please, what you want our legal counsel to do? Could I have a motion forwarded by one of you?
I would have one, but quick question. How long would it take you both to get the options in front of us? Would you be able to do that next week or next meeting?
We certainly would. I don't know if there's a planned meeting before that time, Jim, with the developer, or if we're going to have any meetings with the neighborhood, because we'd be looking for direction as far as what options you want presented.
We can certainly bring up a report back to you in 2 weeks on where we're at on this. We may not have a neighborhood meeting by then, but we would at least know what.
Jim, would we also need a meeting between Jim Rohrs, his attorney, and our attorney just to discuss what options are here?
It'd probably be appropriate.
Because he'd like to voice what he needs to do, and I think we don't have anything in writing. Jim has outlined today what's going on, but I think they have to outline what the delays were and what's gone on, and he will have that documentation that would help us. But you probably want just a meeting to see what they want as their options. So we know that's one of the options. So Jim, you could do that, right? You could meet with our group? Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair,
I just need a second to his motion. I'm sorry.
I'll make the motion that our legal team works with the Rohrs team and to get options from their perspective, and then you develop options from our perspective of the city. What could we or couldn't we do legally, whether that's pull the incentive completely or give him all the time he wants. I want the range in the middle to be able to tell us what we can do in response to this.
Second. Any further discussion on that motion? Commissioner Pepcorn.
Mr. Chair, the very last people we should be considering are the people that lied to us. The neighborhood association, the citizens of Fargo, that's what takes a priority, not what they want. Who gives a shit? he lied to our neighborhoods. He lied to us, and now we're going to worry about what they're willing to offer? Are you kidding me? Anyway, I want to see the Roosevelt neighborhood have a meeting where this guy has to stand and answer, and I don't want us providing any security. Thank you.
Commissioner Preston.
I'm going to actually vote against this motion, and the reason is, I believe our city attorney needs to come back to us with options for what we can do and how we can handle this. I don't want this to get into a negotiating kind of process, and that's what's going to happen if.
I'm not suggesting negotiation. He doesn't have on writing what he's willing to do. So all you have now is what he's documented tonight. How can Nancy respond to it if we have no idea what Jim Roars wants in writing with lawyers involved? Because if you have a lawyer write it down, that's what he theoretically is offering. Hearsay or him speaking here today, how costs gone up 600%, I don't know. I mean, there's a variety of different things. We have a relationship, a developer's agreement with this developer, and in order to meet, he's asking for one thing, that has to go to the Roosevelt neighborhood. They have to know what he is asking for, because after this meeting, he may come up with a different idea. He may have something different he wants, but you need to, if a developer has a different idea, let's get it in writing so we know what that is. That's the only request of that is to do. And then the other part is Nancy has to react to that. We have options. If we don't agree with Jim Roars and what he wants to do, we say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something else. But I always know with attorneys, if you don't have it in writing, it doesn't count. It's not a viable option. It's just hearsay. So that's the only reason I would like something in writing of what he's actually requesting. Commissioner Garrick.
And, to be clear, I never supported the incentive anyway, right? So the odds of me going and saying, well, let's give him an extension are zero because I want to take this incentive anyway, and it never should have been here. That was my vote initially. What I'm saying is the odds of this not going to court if we pull this incentive are zero. He will sue us. He's going to. He's already thinking about how to do it. So we need to be able to say we did our due diligence. We heard from him. We heard what he had to say. We heard from our attorneys, and we heard from the neighborhoods so that we can say that's what we did. Again, I don't support this incentive. I hope it fails, and I hope that we take the money back. Never should have gotten in the first place. But we need to be very careful because we are going to be sued when I hope we take this away.
Commissioner Preston.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I was referring to is we basically have breach of contract unless the unavoidable delays is the claim. And that's the opinion that I think we need from our city attorney. And when you sit down and across the table with someone who wants to ask for a delay, I mean, that can be done in writing. Any kind of argument about this was an unavoidable delay due to certain reasons, that can be done in writing. When you sit down across the table from them, you start negotiating. And I'm sorry, it's not an issue of what they want. It's an issue of, did the delay meet the legal definition?
Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious. I see Jim Laskowitz in the audience. Would you mind? He's the president of the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. We all spent a lot of hours on this. Jim, we can't have this discussion without hearing at least from the representative of the association.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and all the commissioners. I'm glad you let me speak. I was anxious to come up here because I sat with Mr. Nygaard and Mr. Roars many times, and we discussed this issue at length over the course of many months. And it was a painful process, but we got somewhere, we thought, and that's not what we're talking about tonight. Anything I was going to say tonight, I think I will have to just disregard now, because what we're left with is an entire city block that's been demolished. And now we have what we have, which is not what we wanted. We felt that the core issue was trying to preserve some of the character and architecture and I guess the whole neighborhood friendly thing that we had in North Fargo. And that's really what was lost in this process. The townhomes were supposed to be there to help us develop this buffer to the east of this project. And it was the only compromise that we could achieve. And, before Mr. Grinberg left, we were forced into a negotiation that I felt was a little unfair to us because we were not in a position of strength, but we did the best we could. And so at the end of this, we thought we had come to a proper settlement, if you will, which allowed us to get to a point where we felt like this is something we can work with. We got a little bit of a reduction in the height on one side of the complex. We got 7 townhomes, and we got a green park space to the corner of 12th Street and 11th Avenue North. And the rest of it is sort of history at this point. And so now we're left with wondering, where do we go from here? Because what we have is not acceptable. And you can drive by the location, you can take a look at it. I believe the church is a beautiful building, but we're left with a fairly large block-type building to house a lot of college students, and that's not what a neighborhood is about. That being said, that part of it is done. I think we need to decide what we can do going forward, and I certainly anticipate being involved in these discussions. However, if it's meant to put Roosevelt neighborhood in the position of, again, bartering or trying to do some trade, I want the city there at this point, because I don't feel what happened the last time was fair to us. So at this point, I guess I'll leave it up to you guys to decide, but I can tell you that people in our neighborhood are very upset. We've lost that trust. There was a portion of this TIF money that was supposed to come back to us. It never, ever came back to us. And so my question to you is, what happened to the TIF money? And it's something that was supposed to help our neighborhood regroup and regrow and get better, and that's not what's happening.
Jim, where is their TIF money, or where will it be?
There won't be as much as we anticipated because the faith-based housing we were assuming would be taxable, and I think there might have been a change in state law, but because it's attached to the church, it is not. The city did receive about $69,000 this year, and that's in the TIF fund that could be used for a neighborhood project.
So they would get 69?
Yeah, I mean, that's for the city to decide. The plan was to be able to, say, acquire a dilapidated house and demolish it. That was sort of the work plan.
So Jim, we'll have to talk about that, just about that particular part of it. Would you be okay with sharing your email that you sent the commissioners with the form, so you did a good historical overview of what has happened,
Absolutely.
and what was promised to the neighborhood? I thought it was a good discussion of where we started. Any other discussions? Roll call vote on Commissioner Garrick's motion.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back at 6:36. Back to order. We have item 43, proposals for the sale of city-owned property located at 401 3rd Avenue North. Jim Gilmore, you're still at the podium.
Mr. Chair, can we just wait for one more second? Because I think we're missing the most important person at the podium.
Well, John, you want to tell us about your trip to Florida? Or John, whose birthday is it today?
Ben Dow's.
Happy birthday, Ben.
Hey, Ben, for the longest winter in the season we've had it, should we sing happy birthday to you? There she is.
Counter
For
is
a lot
late.
of you
I'm
don't
getting-
know, but Diana is a Viking queen, so she gets to raise her hand like this all the time throughout the state of Minnesota, so. But we're glad about the Green Bay Packers now, right, Dave? Christian Watson? Okay, Jim, now you're on.
We had went out with proposals for this 401 3rd Avenue North, the former City Health Building, to see what kind of development we could have. The RFP was written so they didn't necessarily have to develop on this site. I was well aware there was this idea of a trade involved, but we did receive two proposals. One was from MBA Development, who would build 68 apartments here. It'd be about a $13 million investment. The other option is from Greenacre and Lloyd Companies at Sioux Falls. They would build a larger development here, about a $38 million development. It would include a hotel of, I think, about 115 rooms and 108 apartments, and enough parking on the site to meet most of their needs. I didn't plan to do any presentations tonight. I think most of you have seen their presentations or read the information in the packet. We aren't dealing with any incentives tonight. They would both be asking for incentives. The Sioux Falls group about a 15-year, the MBA group about a 10-year, and so those would not be determined until you select a kind of a preliminary proposal, and we go to our financial advisors and determine what's appropriate. The committees that were reviewing these, asked me to explore whether or not we could try to do both projects and meet American Federal's parking needs. How American Federal is involved in this is they own this parking lot, and they're only willing to sell it if they can end up with this property as their parking lot closer to their building. We looked at some other options for parking for them. They did not feel those were acceptable, and so we weren't able to do both projects as the committee suggested. So it kind of comes back to you. Do you feel this proposal from Greenacre and Lloyd is best, or this proposal from MBA is best? There's representatives from both development groups here to answer any questions. And again, I didn't want to do a detailed presentation because I think most of you have already seen those.
What's the difference in investment?
The Greenacre Lloyd is about 38 million, MBA is about 13 million, although certainly costs are going up. So, but give you a perspective for where they compare to each other.
Questions of the commission? Commissioner Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, I have to remove myself. I own the building at the top, the DVAW LLC. I'm a member of that LLC, and the DVAW stands for Dave, Vicky, Alex, and William. That's my family. So I will not be voting. I can, if you don't mind me saying, it's an excellent group and it would be a great project. And the thing I like about hotels is people that stay in hotels go out to eat, they go out shopping and things like that. So thank you. That's off the record.
I think it was on the record, but do I have a motion? Do I have a motion?
Is there there's a proposal ready to buy it, or is there an offer on the table is what I'm asking?
Yeah, they both offered the same amount. They both offered $500,000 to the city for the property.
Mr. Strand.
Mayor, just for people like me that are slower on the uptake, help us understand which location you're talking about. Are you, because I'm seeing both and it's still confusing.
Yeah.
If I'm confused, I'm guessing others are.
If you were to select the proposal from Greenacre and Lloyd, the hotel and apartments, about a little over 100 units each, would be constructed on this site, and this site would be, this building would be demolished, and American Federal would become the new owner, and they would use it for surface parking for their building across the street. If you select the MBA proposal, there would be 68 apartments built on this. There'd be kind of main floor parking. There's another option for a little more retail, but the proposal was for main floor parking, and this site would remain unchanged.
And Mayor, if I might continue, which of these proposals best reflect what we asked for in the RFPs?
I mean, I think they're both good proposals. That's why it was difficult, I think, for the committee and for us to make a recommendation. I think, certainly, if you're looking for more investment, you do the one to the north. If that's probably the a little more activity there, but Mr. Bartram's proposal, having more housing downtown, certainly is consistent with the downtown plan. I think they're both consistent with our downtown plans.
We were pleased with the Barton Group because tried to work with us on the parking aspect, John. We tried to do a underground parking for the American Federal Bank, and it was like 52 spots, but it wasn't quite as much as they had. So we were unable to negotiate with American Federal to go in the Barton building, and then we could have got both proposals. We would have got both the hotel and the apartment complex. Those negotiations fell down, so now it's really a choice of one or the other, and you'd be left with a parking lot. Ultimately, American Federal may sell that to a builder later if there's new ownership of the bank at some point. Commissioner Preston.
So just to kind of follow up on Commissioner Strand's comment about it being confusing, I think one of the confusing parts here is that when you're including the tax value, the taxing value for the Hotel Green Acres proposal in this, you're assuming that there's no other option for a parking lot for American Federal to take over. I am really disappointed that we couldn't get American Federal to agree to another option. And it's really unfortunate that this is going to end up being another surface parking lot, which will be even closer to downtown, closer to a performing arts center, possibly, if that comes to play. However, I think all effort has been made to get American Federal to agree to something else, and it's not happening. So unfortunate that we couldn't have both projects, because they're both really good projects.
Mr. Strand.
Thank you, and bear with me. We put out an RFP to sell a property at 401 3rd Avenue North. But one of the proposals we're getting is in the next block.
Yeah.
And that was
how does that reflect the RFP we asked for?
the RFP also allowed for you to take this property and use it to get a development done somewhere else. And quite honestly, I was aware that this type of proposal was going to come in. So the RFP was broad enough that you did not have to just build on this site. You could use it and somehow leverage a development somewhere else in the downtown. So,
Commissioner Preston.
But technically, really, we should be comparing what a surface parking lot is going to generate in tax revenue versus the other proposal, because we're just talking about that piece of property, really.
but
Right.
that's all the city actually controls, you're right.
But technically, we're replacing a parking lot with a parking lot, so that revenue goes the same either way. You get a $38 million project, so.
I think the other thing,
Mr. Gehrig.
the other thing to consider is if you think it's going to stay a surface parking lot forever, it's probably not correct, right? And it's easier to develop on a blank slate than it is to develop on something that's already there. So, and it's also cheaper. So I think if we can address the building to the north and have something developed there, that's the $38 million proposal, correct? Yeah. So my motion is to accept the bid from the company who is going to build on the 4th and 4th property.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Further discussion? Roll call vote?
Gehrig?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Any other business the group has tonight? No other birthdays, John? Nothing else going on?
Mayor, I'd like to mention one thing. Desi Fleming is not here tonight, but, you know, Desi's one of our heroes in our community, and she was acknowledged as such with the Chamber of Commerce's, the
YMCA.
YMCA Women of the Year Awards recently.
YWCA.
And YWCA, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But Desi received a tremendous acknowledgement from the community in the field of public health for being a Woman of the Year. And I just, you know, what she's been through on our behalf, directing public health, corralling us through COVID, and dealing with her own personal health crisis. We just have a tremendous human being in our midst, and I want to thank her and for what she does and congratulate her.
Any other business? Is motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn.